Hello, everyone. Welcome. Are we the last session of the day?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay.
Happy hour is the last day.
I know. Happy hour is the last session of the day. Those are where the real questions go down. We're excited to be here. I am Brittany Ward, owner and founder of the 21st Agency, and I've got with me here today Mr. Phil Michaels. I'm just going to read his bio and have him tell you about himself. The man has done it all. Quite frankly, and he's going to give you some insider tips into that around all the cultural relevance. So here we go. Forbes 30 under 30 entrepreneur, Shark Tank finalist, founding member of Tembo Education and private jet company that became the fourth fastest company in U.S. history to go public on the New York Stock Exchange. Please welcome Mr. Phil Michaels.
Thank you. I love that we're here in Tampa, Florida, and to those that brought the cold weather in, shame on you.
Right, go back, take it back. We don't
I'm
want
not
it.
built for the cold anymore, but so grateful to be here and love having you all and so excited to learn more about you and see how I can help you in any way. So, yes, a
Why don't
little.
you kick us off? I mean, we got the sound bite, like we got the tweet. Can you just give us a little more background on what you've accomplished so far, and then we'll get into some of the questions here. But hopefully that's relevant for everyone to understand your perspective.
Yes, for sure. So you know at which lens I'm looking at these questions through and answers through. I've been in jets, education, and a coaching business. So just to give you a little background, my first company that I got a lot of notoriety for, we educate 0 to 6-year-old children around the world using text messages, WhatsApp, and Facebook Messenger by sending one curriculum activity per day to the parent's phone so the parent can educate their child without screen time. We're in 7 countries and 17 languages. That's what led to me getting published in Forbes magazine. And this is a testament to how important relationships are. A mentor of mine during COVID reached out to me out of the blue and said, "Hey, Phil, you want to start a private jet company?" Well, but I don't get asked that every day. And I looked into the market and saw there was a 25% increase in jet usage due to COVID. And if I've learned anything about entrepreneurship, timing is everything. If you just get in at the right time, you're going to ride that wave of momentum. And we did, and ultimately became the fourth fastest company in U.S. history to go public on the New York Stock Exchange.
Very impressive. Yes,
Thank you.
lots learned, and I mean, mentioning COVID obviously, and kind of the opportunities that came out of that, and the culture that has since come out of that. Lots to unpack there. One thing I want to mention: we're in a smaller room, and we would love to have any additional thoughts, insights, requests, or questions, just as we're chatting here, like open format. So, and just raise your hand, shout it out, like whatever you got. So let's kick it off here. We're talking about relevance at the speed of culture, winning the moment without losing brand integrity, which is very difficult tension for most brands to hold, right? They either capture the TikTok moment or they follow their content calendar, never to be seen in the likes of the algorithm because they're too busy publishing their own brand messages. I think that you have done a really nice job kind of balancing the two. Can you explain, first off, do you think cultural relevance is a strategy, or do brands just get lucky?
That's a great question. And I think it's a mix of both, where you have your strategic initiatives that you're trying to achieve, but then there's a little bit of luck when you're experimenting with content. And we were just talking about this today, where Gary Vaynerchuk, or Gary V as people know him, he always suggests that the biggest mistake brands are making and marketers are making is they're paying for ads that they don't necessarily know are working organically yet. So with us, we try to experiment with a bunch of different types of content, which is what he recommends. See which one takes off virally, organically, and then that's the one that you put money behind and turn into a paid ad. So we've been doing this actually with the jet company, where we're trying to stay culturally relevant while experimenting concurrently. So we have our strategic initiatives we're trying to achieve while also looking at what's happening in the moment. And I think a company that does this very well recently was the Super Bowl with the foam party hats. Does anyone know the foam party hat company? They were a Shark Tank finalist as well. So they built these funny foam hats, and what they do is instead of doing their typical themes throughout the year like St. Patrick's Day or Christmas, they now look at what's culturally relevant that day. Because the news is changing so quickly now, you have to hop on that wave of momentum as soon as possible. So they noticed there was this controversy going on with the Bears and the Packers, and you might have heard about this. It went viral, and they made these foam party hats, which had a rat, I think, cheese grating the cheese of the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, it was great.
So yeah, that's an example of you can have your strategic initiatives, but there's a little bit of luck of trying a bunch of different things out and see which one hits. And so for our jet company, what we did was we tried a bunch of different pieces of content out. And the one that hit was me going out on the street and asking people, how much do you think it costs to fly on a private jet? Some of you might have seen this video. The marketing team's doing their job well if you have. But those were the ones, out of all the ones that we put out there, seemed to really captivate the audience. And so that was a form of luck. We just tried a bunch of different things out and saw what worked.
Yeah, I love that. Great example. Also, when you said foam party, I went back to spring break. I don't know. But the actual campaign that he's talking about, if you haven't seen it, you should look it up. They did a really nice job of capturing like the moment. I would also say, to build on that too, Phil, like for us, we think about cultural moments within the context of the brand evergreen. So like we plan to be spontaneous is generally speaking, like there's a window within sort of the content calendar, the content plan where there's still flux. So it's not like you're just riding off the cuff constantly, but you still have opportunity to pull in when stuff starts to hit. And then you can go and do more of it. So I love that. Especially with your example of man on the street and really seeing what's working and what people are gravitating towards. Was that a surprise to you? Like, what did you learn from that?
Yes, because we've seen other content pieces done in that way where they go on the street, they interview people, but it was knowing what's the hook, that initial one-liner. That one is going to captivate the audience enough for them to listen to you and stay in front of the camera. But two is going to be enough for the audience that's watching that content, like, I have that question too. How much does it cost to fly private? And then their responses are all over the place, from $600 to $100,000. So that polarity and volatility of responses also captivated the audience in another way.
Yeah, I feel like that's a great nugget that as brand marketers or even agencies, we can take back to how do you build around like a really contextually relevant, interesting, entertaining, informative point that, it's simply an FAQ. You're like digging out your FAQs and then making them work in a really inviting and engaging way.
And I like the way you mentioned it's almost planned spontaneity, where you structure your schedule so much, but you leave these open windows of just experimentation and fun. And that's very exciting because it makes the team look forward to it too. I think a great example of this is the airport. Does anyone know the recent story with the Tampa airport and how they went viral with the pajamas? I mean, and you see some of these influencers, what did they do? They put on their pajamas and they went right to the airport and started filming content. That was a great example of people not waiting and being open enough to, let's just try something out. Let's see if it sticks and if it goes viral or not.
Yeah. As we talk about, content and how it evolves around the cultural, backdrop, at what point do you feel like it just becomes a tool and not the backdrop? Like, how do you really bring it into the fold in a natural, organic way? Yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely that dichotomy of remaining authentic while also wanting to captivate the audience on these trends and momentous moments. And two interesting ones that I'm reminded of are this real estate agent that she's quite a bit older, and she saw all these viral trends going on with these real estate agents doing this quick cuts and edits through the home, and she did it in such a funny way, in her own authentic spin and spice on it. And that's what made it even funnier than the other ones. And that one started taking off more than the younger generation that were doing those same real estate interviews. And there was one doing a lawyer, and he was also, elderly, and he's not known for social media content. But that, I call this the zigzag principle, which was coined, I think, by Zig Ziglar, where when everyone's zigging, you should be zagging. So it's like you still want to captivate the audience and capture those moments, like the pajamas in the airport, but then you put your own little authentic twist on it, your own little spin or taste, and that's what makes it jump out in front of everybody else as a viral potential moment. And the street polling one, that's gotten so popular that there's now even a media agency called the Street Poller, and he allows brands to contact them just for street poll content. So that way you can send a character out there on the streets like myself for your own brand.
So smart. I feel like there have been podcasts and TikTok brands created just around that concept, and people watching and witnessing what's working and then sort of making it their own, right? And so I love what you just said. It's like, take the lesson, take the cultural moment, and then put it inside your own brand guardrails. Speaking of which, how do you know if it's a cultural moment that you can participate in? Like, what is your gut check? Do you have tools, processes, documentation? Like, how do you even begin to tackle that?
That's a great question too, because sometimes as you're growing, you also want to set up parameters to make sure you're not stepping over the line. But you also at the same time concurrently want to be nimble enough where you're able to move quickly and there's not too many bottlenecks, right? Or bureaucratic red tape. And so one of the things that you can do is set up a team of ninjas, which is kind of like this special forces team that operates in their own little, sector of your business, where they can move quickly, but they also know what's the absolute must to have before we produce this content. So usually you need that legal lens, of course, but if that legal lens could be put on an offshoot team that can move very nimbly, they don't get caught up in the day-to-day operations. They're almost there just for those experimental phases. And maybe they do that part-time, or they have to be on call for certain hours of the week that are just for experimentation. So you can still move quickly, but set up parameters and boundaries to ensure you're not overstepping the line. And I deal with this also in my personal brand too. I was telling Brittany that one of the things, being in Jets, being in early childhood education, having a coaching business, they don't at face value have anything to do with each other. So I'm working with this agency, Brand Builders Group. They've done Lewis Howes, School of Greatness, Ed Milet. And one of the things that I've learned through this experience is something called Sheehan's Wall. And has anyone heard of Sheehan's Wall? Okay, so some of you. It's essentially, you have to become notable in one specific area. You have to have laser obsessive focus in one area and rise to the top in that respective realm. Then and only then are you able to go broad and think more generalized content. And so an example of this is Lewis Howes. Does anyone know how Lewis Howes first became well known in the School of Greatness? He was an expert. He was the number one guru with LinkedIn posts and how do you become known on LinkedIn. And then and only then, when he became the top in the world at LinkedIn, did people start to respect his opinion outside of LinkedIn. Gary Vee, does anyone know what he first became famous for? Wine. That's exactly right, red wine. And then, now there's kids following him that have no idea he was ever in wine, or Lewis Howes was ever at LinkedIn. Tony Robbins was in smoking cessation, but now he does a bunch of things. So they call this breaking through Sheehan's Wall, where you become known in one respective area, and then and only then, once you've broken through Sheehan's Wall, do you start to parlay that momentum into other areas of content.
I love this concept so much because I think it's very tempting once you decide your brand can answer a bunch of questions to make a bunch of things. And, especially in a world where squirrel is like a real thing, you get a comment, and next thing you know, you're down the rabbit hole of we have a whole new content pillar and strategy, and we're off to the races and like building something out before you really have credibility to be there, right? And so when it comes to culture, I think some brands just natively own the opportunity to show up culturally, whereas others is like, what you doing here? How do you decide? This is for me. We belong here. We fit here. Sort of the same coin, the opposite side, right? Like, at what point is it acceptable for you to step into that place?
It's a great question, and I can be guilty of wanting to ride the wave of everything. And I think it's important to have two different thought leaders in your team. One that goes with the gut, they're really good at reading intuition and their gut feeling and more of the esoteric, if you will. And then the polar opposite end of the spectrum, having someone on your team that's more of the numbers or left brain person, let's say. They're quantifiable, right? They're measurable. They want to do everything by the book. And the balance of those two, usually the meritocracy emerges on its own of the best idea. Because if it was left up to me, I'm just going to go with everyone like, let's do it. It's hot right now. Let's ride that wave. Timing is everything. Time kills all deals. And sometimes you need someone to keep you in check. And so it's a mix of both. Listening to the gut and the intuition. Does this feel right? More of the airy fairy woo woo stuff, but then mixed with a more measurable, quantifiable, hey, here's the 5 criteria we use to measure and weight these variables when we're deciding on content. Does it check all of those boxes? So that way it can be an easy litmus test or barometer for whether or not you should move forward. And to keep you focused, piggybacking off of what we just talked about with the laser obsessive focus, and one having, instead of multiple brand pillars, there's this great story of the founder of Priceline.com. He was telling me how he was consulting for this TV. Oh yeah, he actually was here in Tampa, and I was speaking with him. He's consulting for a TV mount company, and this company made the mounts for your TV to go up on the wall, right in your home. And he goes, well, what's the number one reason people choose your TV mount over somebody else's? And he goes, well, we market it in 3 ways. 1, it's made of airplane grade steel. 2, it's easy to mount on the wall. And 3, it's easy to move to another room in case you change your mind later. And he goes, okay, that's great, but what's the number one reason? He's like, I don't know. So we're gonna go to the store. So he takes the TV mount guy to the store, and they stop every customer.
I love this so much. This is like man on the street, right?
This is like man on the street. You're testing things out, right? He goes to the shelf and he stops the customer every time they chose his TV mount over somebody else's. And they're like, excuse me, why did you choose that TV mount over the other TV mounts? And the overwhelming majority of the customers all said, if this TV mount is made of airplane grade steel, it's strong enough to hold my $1,000 TV up that I just bought. Save that investment. He goes, okay, I want you to remove all marketing from your website, your marketing materials. All I want you to say is made of airplane grade steel. And their sales went up over 38% just from that one change alone. So how could you captivate your audience by owning the category? Don't try to be the best. Try to be the only. What's the one category that you can own as your number one USP, your unique selling point, your one differentiator that sets you apart from all the other competitives in the landscape, right? And so now you're no longer competing because you own that category. And does anyone remember Uber's very first tagline? It immediately told you what they did and set them apart from everybody else. Everyone's private driver. So what could be that one liner, that one categorical claim you can make that lets you own the category?
I think that, the cultural component of some of these taglines, some of these positionings, right, is exactly tapping into people's ultimate desires, right? And those companies and those businesses did it the best because it saw a gap in the market, right? And then it just went right into the solution. And so when you think about, and I love that you just told the Priceline story here. And so if a CMO came to you and said, we want to be culturally relevant, like we don't know where to start, right? What would you say to them? How do they go about entering that space?
So similar to the proposal I was sharing earlier about, can you set aside a team of ninjas that always stays on top of the latest trends and narratives? Well, how do you do that? Well, one of the ways is you have someone, and they do this in the crypto trading world too, because it's so much based on volatility and day trading of the ups and downs, is you have someone that's monitoring the news. And so let's say your criteria for the benchmark before you make a move is we need to see 3 of the mainstream news sources publish this before we're willing to capitalize on that momentum. So let's say it's the pajama one, right? Okay, you see the first news story come out about the pajamas. It's like, oh, wait a second. The New York Post is now sharing and resharing what Tampa's social media handles sharing. Okay, now we have CNN talking about it. Okay, it's hit our rule of threes. Now that's a litmus test for us to make it to the next level, whereas it doesn't meet our brand criteria. Do we have the good gut feeling about it? Let's move forward. So do you have a team member that every morning is browsing, let's say, the top 25 news sites on Twitter, Instagram, so you can pay attention to those trends? And that's what I would do is find out, one, how are you witnessing what's happening in the world? And then 2, what are your metrics or variables for your law of a threshold where once it meets this threshold, then we're willing to move to the next stage into action.
Yeah. Throw it back for a second because I also mentioned the airport when I was speaking because they do such a good job. But one of the things originally that helped them craft and get to where they were, where they are really, is the ability to listen and change quickly. And once things started to kind of take hold, then move in that direction, right? And so having somebody monitoring things because things move wildly fast. Like, how do you know then if you jump on that, if it's going to work? Do you know? And how do you measure it?
We don't know for a lot of our tests and experiments, and that's the beauty of, you have to give your team the autonomy and freedom to have space to play in that sandbox. And so an easy way to do this is you set up those legal parameters, like, all right, it needs to meet these criteria before we move forward. It has to have the legal team member give their green light. But then also, what's their max budget they can do without you needing your approval? Maybe you're willing to give them $5,000 per month to play with. Have you set up parameters and limitations for them to have freedom and autonomy to experiment with? And I think that's a key. Like, you don't necessarily know until you try. And so I think the key mechanism here is having a system for experimentation and testing.
Yeah. We've seen kind of an extended thought from that. Like, we have seen and tested cultural moments, and there's always going to be the person in the room who's like, show me the stats, right? So you have to. And a lot of it isn't necessarily about the initial like virality or reach. It's really about the 4 people who it really landed for. And that is the nugget that you needed to validate this resonates, right? I'm gonna age myself. Daniel Tosh used to have this stand-up, and he would tell this joke about, he told a joke about one of his jokes. And he said, I know that I'm doing like a good bit when there's only one person left in the room just cackling, like peeing themselves because the joke is so funny, and everyone else is like, what are you doing? Where is this going? But that's the person I wrote the joke for. You know what I mean?
And so I think we sometimes like have the tendency to want to like jump into the water, this cultural trend, mass appeal, and we forget like we're maybe just doing it for the loyalists. Like we're doing it for the person to advocate on our behalf to create like a very specific tie back to what we're trying to accomplish, the campaign, the brand, the product, the offering, the experience, right? um I don't know how I got here, but like I think the point is you when you step into cultural moments, you really want to make sure that you don't get lost in just the sea of we're doing it to be here. Instead, you're doing it for like that one, two, four, five people.
100%. And I also think, to your point about measurement, if we were doing it and it wasn't leading to real metrics, because there's the vanity metrics of how many follows you've got or views, but then did it change the bottom line? And so for us, we had 2 videos go viral on TikTok, and 2 videos out of all the videos we tested, 2 of them went viral on TikTok and 2 on Instagram. And we had our record sales numbers as a result. And now we have over 130,000 users. And so it's really turned in, those vanity metrics turned into real metrics. So it is important to measure it to make sure you're not just, sometimes you do stuff just for fun, right? And that's important for the internal team morale. But then and to pay the bills and make sure that morale continues, it needs to be changing the bottom line in some form or fashion.
Did the videos that went viral, were you like, this is the one?
This is the worst part. The things that I think are going to do so well are the ones that completely flop. And then the ones that I think, we're probably not going to get any views, end up going viral and taking off to millions of views, comments. And we're going to test some things out. We're going to test out TikTok live shopping. So what we found is in the Eastern Hemisphere, they typically are 3 to 4 years ahead in these viral trends, and then it'll eventually lead to the Western Hemisphere. And what has been receiving prominence over there is these live TikTok shops where you're shopping in real time, and women are trying something on literally this fast. This is how fast they're taking off the clothes.
We do that enough too.
And it's working, which is mind-blowing to me, but it's working over there to the point where now their customer service stays online on TikTok 24/7. So they have 3 rotating shifts where the first person they'll be on live TikTok, and that's their customer service now, and they just ask questions in real time and people are following them. So I'm expecting this to start taking off here in the US, and so we're trying to pioneer this new frontier and stay ahead of these trends. But yeah, sometimes you got to try it out because you don't know what's going to work or not work.
Yeah. 2 thoughts, both directions here. So we have a client that is direct to consumer and HSN. So she is like the queen of selling online, original, OG. And now they're on TikTok live selling. And it is a cultural moment, and it is catching on now in, more brands are really taking advantage of it here. But what we're seeing is and maybe you can attest to this and give some examples, but it's just as much about sort of the entertainment piece as it is about the selling piece. Like the company that I'm referring to is a skincare company, right? And so there's only so many ways that you can like put the lotion on the skin before you have to engage your users and thank you and in conversation, so they stick around. And they have done a really beautiful job of creating, it's a reality TV show, quite frankly, and they've got different hosts that come on, different personalities, different times, people tune in, and we have found it's also a really good way to test and see what works. The bar is very low. If you get it wrong live, it's like, however many 75 people never to be seen again. But if they like it and it sells or it hooks, then you can take it and run with it even further.
I like to call this edutainment, and it's not my original term, but it's a great way. I think this is the new version of education. It's got to be entertaining, and you're seeing this with like Miss Rachel and Netflix documentaries where it's entertaining, but at the same time it's educating you on something. And why not be educated as you're enjoying it? So I think this is another novel way to capitalize on that momentum.
I want to talk a little bit about speed here because as someone who's on Shark Tank, the speed at which you have to capture attention, pitch the product, brand, service, credibility, reasons to believe, I feel like there's a lot of those lessons and learnings to be had when you move in the sphere of like capturing a cultural moment. Did you learn anything from that you're still using? And if so, what and how?
With regard to speed and just how do you quickly adapt?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, today's a perfect example.
Phil agreed to come on the stage at 10 a.m. Yeah.
Day of.
Day of.
No, that's the beauty of entrepreneurship, right? You just have to be willing to adapt and keep moving forward. And that's what you do. And you learn and you grow and you adapt, and you just need to have systems and tools set up to automate a lot of the trivial, mundane decisions. So you have more spontaneity to do this fun, last minute type stuff. And I think it goes back to setting up systems and parameters for your team to experiment and test. How could you also set up systems and parameters for your team to remain nimble as you're growing to be a more multinational corporation or a mid-level or large growth corporation? How do you maintain that agility in the company? What systems and parameters could you set up for your team to capitalize very quickly and adapt and make moves and changes very quickly? Because you're right, nowadays everything's changing so quickly. Your team is going to get left behind if they don't have an ability to pioneer each new frontier.
Yeah, I agree. And I think part of being able to participate in some of these moments, you have to be set up to be agile, right? And so what are your processes? What does the team look like to be able to like execute that? Does anybody have solutions? Like, have you found any ways that you're able to like hop on quickly?
Yeah, what's worked for you, and also maybe we use these last 10 or so minutes for questions to make it more engaging and interactive.
Yeah.
How are you selecting the channels that you're testing these on? TikTok, Meta, Pay, whatever.
Yeah, so he asked, how do you select the channels that you're testing this on? Sure. Wherever our client is.
Oh.
I mean, the reality is there are a lot lower expectations on TikTok related to perfection. So if you're testing, it's a good place to show up, and algorithmically, you can attract people much easier in the vein that you may not be accustomed to publishing content around, right? So for example, what business are you in?
Advertising.
Who do you advertise for?
We do programmatic advertising for retail, brands, and tons of it.
Okay, you sell cars now. Sorry.
Deal.
Great. If you sell cars and you want to test something new on TikTok, and you show up and you decide, actually today we want to talk about sustainability, but it's not what you're known for, and your whole channel's been curated, or you've been posting on Instagram and Facebook, and now you're going to show up to talk about sustainability. Really, the algorithm is tuned to interest, not tuned to followers on TikTok. So it's a much better way to investigate, even if people who get sustainability content are interested. They don't have to follow you, right, to get your content out of the gate, because your For You page is curated by interest and by topic and by content. So by the pure nature of like, we're going to go outside the guidelines, we're going to test like this cultural moment that you're having with new paint. I'm making this up clearly. Paint that is more sustainable. It's not lead, but nobody has lead. I don't know anything about cars. Why did I pick this? It's a great place to show up to do it. It's a much lower bar. The expectation of perfection, right? Like, people are filming. How many of you see content creators and they have like put their camera up their nose. I'm like, can we at least get just straight on? So the bar is low and it's an easy place to test.
Yeah, and the way I would answer it is it's similar to Brittany, it's audience specific. So for our private jet, there's 5 ways to fly private. For the ones that are doing ownership and jet card, you know, the demographic is predominantly white males 45 plus. They're not hanging out on Instagram and TikTok as much. So for them, we went to Wall Street Journal, New York Times, the Sherpa Report, the Rob Report, where travel and leisure, where they're in high-end luxury magazines and high-end business newspapers. Whereas Vaunt, our empty leg app, this is $3,000 a year. And so a much different audience that were on TikTok and Instagram. So that's where those videos really took off for that audience. And then for my education company, right, we're in 7 countries, so it's a little different channel than the ones I just shared. So it's really audience specific, and you want to test that content out where you think that audience resides. Great question, though.
In your companies as you're building, where do you go from like founder? Like, what are the first 3 hires? And I'm curious where marketing falls in line with ops and sales, et cetera, et cetera. Like, how do you think of that when you're starting a company?
So who are your first 3 hires and where does marketing come in?
Yeah, we're just 3 to 5, whatever. Yeah.
3 to 5. Yeah. There's so many ways to answer this question. As a founder and a business owner myself, and someone who looks at growing, scaling companies, oftentimes, like, I'm a marketer. I started a marketing business. It is within my skill set to at least answer to that role, wear that hat. So it would be probably one of the last hires, right? But I think that in failing to do so, oftentimes you start creating things for yourself. And so I would just give that as a lookout, because owner, founder, marketing, right, naturally through the vein of whatever your service or product is, if you know and use and like it, which you probably do if you started the company, you're going to start creating content that is very specific to the nature of how you use and view the service or product, right? And so I would just try and get people outside of your own echo chamber to weigh in on that. I'm like off organizational charts here, but like that's my answer.
Great answer. And I might be biased, but I think sales solves all problems. And, you know, having too much money to know what to do with makes the next hire much easier. So I think having someone that's incredibly talented at sales makes every other hire after that easy. And so, you know, in my opinion, marketing explains what's happening, whereas sales gets things in the door to make things happen. And, you know, so I'm all about sales, sales, sales. You know, the more sales you can get in the door, the better. And then the marketing tells that story. And then, you know, having a finance person to manage the amount of money that's coming in to make sure you're allocating your budget properly can be really helpful. But sometimes it doesn't need to be a hire. It could be someone that's you're consulting with once a month to help you with those financials. Fractional programs have been really taking off over the past few years. So having a fractional CFO doesn't hurt while you're growing the company.
Do you have a company?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And are you looking to hire? Is that where the lens here?
I'm just curious because I think in your conversation you could argue that, like, do you have the infrastructure to then go spend on marketing to fuel the flame, right? Or are you a founder who's a marketer and so then you get caught in the trap of I'm going to do this role when you should be building a company, right? And so I'm just kind of curious of like where things are right now. Are you going for a TikTok viral moment, or are you building like culture and foundation and ops and sales and all the other infrastructure to be ready for that moment of virality? And so I was just curious, based on, you know, both of you are also business owners, and
Yeah, great question. And you just said something, you hit a nerve. don't try and jump in and go viral before you have the foundation and the building blocks. I think that is where people fall down. Like, they chase culture and they chase virality because, yes, sales do solve everything. But if the consumer and customer shows up to your business or brand and they don't know who you are and what you stand for, things will absolutely fall apart. So this is an add-on, not a foundation. Do you agree?
Yeah, I think I could probably make an argument for both, because I've found sometimes when you sell so much, you're like, oh shit, we need to get our shit together. And it forces you to level up quicker. So it depends what type of personality you are. Like, some people, pressure is a privilege. And if you can use that pressure to capitalize on the momentum, I think you can use that as a tool. But some people, it's a crutch. And some people, it can be more detrimental. So you just have to know yourself well enough to know, do you do better under pressure? And do you like those hard deadlines where you have to rush to get things done? Or are you someone that's very regimented, organized, and you plan months ahead, and it really depends on your personality. That's what I would say.
I actually love that addition because I feel like in marketing and business ownership, there's a constant tension point of back and forth, right? Like, you have to push and then go figure your stuff out, come back and then push and then come back, figure your stuff out, because you need those cycles of growth to keep things moving and growing. And without the growth, yes, you die. So it's not an or, it's an and.
Yeah, and I get energized by that. Like, go, 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 and that high energy. We have 3 minutes left in this session. How many questions can we get in? Yeah. I get juiced up by that, but some people, they hate that. So you just gotta know what you thrive on. Great question. What other questions do we have? This table's hot right now.
It's the side of the room. I don't know what it is. But, I did not see your man on the street video about the Jets. Forgive me. I also haven't seen. I haven't seen the movie Frozen either, so I'm not the perfect person. But did you, with all the questions of asking them, how much do you think it would cost? Did you actually answer the question in the video of how much it did cost? Just curious.
Yeah. So I tried a bunch of different hooks. Like, we would just go walk around Sparkman Wharf and Armature Works and Water Street, and I would go up, hey, do you have a second? I would get shut down. They thought I was selling something. Hey, how much do you think it costs to fly private? And that seemed to, like, people really looking up in the air and thinking, I don't know, 20 grand? And so I did answer the question. So how the rest of the pitch goes is, it's a good guess. Typically for a one-way trip, it would be 20 grand one way from, let's say, Tampa to New York. Well, what if I told you you could fly unlimited free flights for $3,000 a year? And their shock value is obviously very large. Oh, no way, that sounds too good to be true. And that opens up the door for me to educate them on our empty leg app that does allow them to fly unlimited free flights for $3,000 a year. Vaunt.
How much variations of scripts did you have?
We just winged it. We didn't even write a script down. This is what's funny. We were first going to do, so we went into an office at the private jet airport, and we're like, we're going to sit down and just do educational content. We'll do phone calls that you've probably seen people do, where they have a customer call up and then you're pretending it's a real client. And then we're like, let's just get out of the office. We got to move our bodies a little bit. Let's just go out on the street and start talking to people. And so for that, we didn't have any script. We just tried a bunch of stuff out. And based on the audience's response, that's how we gauge what's working, what's not working. Okay, we were like, all right, let's get some diversity in the videos. Let's get every different type of demographic. All right, let's get someone with a dog. And we just started having fun with it. And then we just kept replicating it and trying out new things. So I feel like we're still learning as we go. We don't know the secret sauce, but now we've seen our competitors are doing copycat content as a result, which is a good sign that it's working.
Yeah, that's how you know it's a win. Yeah, people are copying you. Is there anything you learned from this exercise where you're like, oh, maybe
I
we
like
should do that?
lighting and angle.
My left side's the good side. No. Is there anything you learned really that you would like take into other experiences out of that?
Yes, well, personally, I get bored if we're doing the same thing over and over again. So I have, for my own energy, I need to constantly switch it up. So I was telling Brittany, we started doing, all right, we have to get the question in within the 30 seconds you're allowed to cross the crosswalk. You know, when they put the timer up there on the street sign. And so I'm like, this is Crosswalk Talks. We're going to find out how much it costs to fly private. And I'm walking on the crosswalk with the other people while the timer's in the background. So it creates this little bit of tension and anxiety with the viewer who's watching the video, like, oh my gosh, he has 10 seconds left. Is he going to get the question out? And so little things like that, we just figure it out as I'm going across the crosswalk. And we're like, oh, we could use this Crosswalk Talks. Okay. So some of this, you know, I wish I could say, oh, I was so smart. I figured it all out. No, we just learned as we went along. And so I think the key learning lesson here is just take action. Be okay with the awkward haircut stage and get comfortable with the discomfort. And by taking action, you're going to learn way more by taking action and doing than trying to think, plan, and strategize in the office. Just get out there and talk to people. That's my rant for the day.
I love it. We are negative 1 minute, 28 seconds. Are there any other questions though? I mean, I could do this all day, but thank you so much, Phil. Thank you guys for asking awesome questions and just being wonderful guests. If you have a good rest of the day, we'll see you at happy hour.